Today I'm going to show you how to use NC Child's Housing Lead Risk Map for North Carolina. This map is interactive, and so you can do things like zoom in and out, click on a specific area to see more information, or view different types of lead risk data. Over the course of this video, we'll show you how to do each of those things, and then at the end we can also talk about some examples on how you can best use the data and how you should think about the results. So let's start with the basics. The first view of the map shows you the entire state of North Carolina. And you'll notice that the state is broken up into smaller areas. These are census tracts. Census tracts are areas determined by the United States Census Bureau and are often used to report population data, including income and race. They are roughly the size of a neighborhood, typically with anywhere between 2,000 and 8,000 people living in each one. Most of the data that the map will show you is going to be shown at the census tract level. All of this information that we're going to talk about today, including information on census tracts, information on the different types of data that this map can show you, factors that go into the lead risk model, that can all be found by clicking this information button in the top right-hand corner of the screen. You can click this button at any time while you're using the map to refer to this information. At this point, you'll notice that there's actually a lot of different buttons that you can click. And so knowing what each of those buttons do is going to make your experience using the map much more pleasant. Let's start by taking a look in this top left-hand corner. Here's where you'll find the controls to help you move around in the map. The plus and minus sign allow you to zoom in and out of the map. And you can also click and drag on the map itself in order to center a different area on your screen. If at any time you want to return to that view of the entire state of North Carolina, you can click this home button. Now, an easy way to find your home address or an address that you're interested in very quickly is to use this search bar in the top left-hand corner. I'm going to go ahead and type in the address for NC Child's office in Raleigh, and you'll see that the address actually comes up before I even finish typing it. So I can go ahead and click that address, and the map immediately zooms into that point on the map. It's important at this point to note that the map is not showing you the lead risk at your specific address. Instead, the map is showing the average lead risk for the census tract that your address lies in. So now that we have a better idea of how to move around within the map itself, let's take some time to talk about the different types of data that this map can show you. If you go over to the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see this button that says Layer List. When you click that, the different types of data will show up in this panel. So sometimes we'll refer to this data as layers. Sometimes we might refer to it as a data set. Those words are going to be used interchangeably. The first layer that you'll see is the lead risk layer. So each census tract is assigned a lead risk, either high, medium, low, or lowest. And we calculated these lead risk scores based on two important predictors of lead risk. One of those is the portion of houses that have lead paint in a census tract, and the second is the portion of the population that falls below 1.25 times the poverty level determined by the federal government. Census tracts that have a high portion of both of these factors will have a higher lead risk score. So you can determine the lead risk for each census tract by either comparing the color in the legend to the color of the census tract, or by zooming in on a census tract that you are interested in, clicking it, and referring to the information in the pop-up box. So this pop-up box not only tells you the lead risk score, but it'll also give you information on the factors that went into that lead risk score. Now, the map can show you other data besides just lead risk. So the next layer we're going to talk about is children's blood lead level data. This data comes from blood lead tests that some children receive to measure the level of lead in their blood, which can be an indicator of their exposure level. This blood lead level data is shown for zip codes, and so it's important to note that the boundaries of this blood lead level data is going to be different than the boundaries of the census tracts. To have the map display the blood lead level data, you would uncheck the box next to lead risk and go ahead and check the box next to the blood lead level data. Zip codes that are shaded with a relatively darker shade of blue are going to have a higher percentage of children that were tested to have blood lead levels greater than 5 micrograms per deciliter. When a child has a blood lead level greater than 5 micrograms per deciliter, it's often recommended that certain health actions are completed. So we're also going to refer to this level as the action level. The scale bar tells you that zip codes with this darkest shade of blue have more than 5% of tested children with blood lead levels above the North Carolina action level. Now you can also click on a zip code to see more information on the percent of tested children with blood lead levels above the action level and the total number of children tested for the years 2005 to 2015. The last data layer that you can look at is the population density of young children. Children under the age of 6 are the most vulnerable to lead exposure. At this stage in life, children's brains and bodies are still developing, and lead exposure can be very disruptive to that development. So in this layer, you will see the number of children under the age of 5 per square mile for each census tract. Again, you can zoom in to the census tract and click on it to see more information on the number of children per square mile, as well as the total number of children living in that census tract. Areas with the darkest shades of green have the highest number of children living in that area. Now, before we end today, I want to talk a little bit about how you should think about the results of this map. In looking at the big picture, this map tells us a lot about the trends in North Carolina where lead in housing poses the greatest risk to children. So for instance, we see high lead risk along certain highways, including Highway 85 between Greensboro and Charlotte. Along Highway 95, you see high lead risk. And then we tend to see higher lead risk in the center of cities compared to the surrounding suburban areas. This is likely due to the fact that usually suburban areas are a newer housing stock that will not have lead paint and the risks posed by lead paint. Now, it's a good time to also stress that this map is only showing you lead risk from housing. It's not showing you lead risk from any other sources of lead, such as drinking water or soil. And the second thing to stress is that this is only a model, and so it may not always reflect the reality of your situation in your home, your situation in your neighborhood. You should use this map to better understand lead risk from housing in your area, but you should not assume that a child is safe from lead exposure if they live in a low risk area, or that a child is guaranteed to be lead poisoned if they live in a high risk area. Now, in addition to noting areas of high lead risk on the map, such as these areas along highways and in city centers, it's important to note areas where we see high percentages of children testing for blood lead levels greater than the action level. However, you should not rely on this blood lead level data alone to tell you if the risk of lead exposure is high in your area. So, blood lead testing is not consistent across the entire state of North Carolina. Some areas may have a low percentage of children with blood lead levels above 5 micrograms per deciliter, simply because there just hasn't been much testing in that area. Now, we hope that you will take the time to explore this map and learn about lead risk in your area. So whether you live in an area of high lead risk or low lead risk, if you have young children, we especially encourage you to visit the prevention tab of the lead-free NC website to learn more about preventing lead exposure. We also encourage you to talk to your doctor about getting your child tested for lead. There's resources in that prevention tab to prepare you for that conversation.